Welcome back to Unwiring Tech. I'm your host Ranjana, and today we are exploring a courtroom battle that could redefine the tech world as we know it. This is FTC versus Meta, the trial that could break the giant. The long awaited antitrust trial between Meta and the Federal Trade Commission, which is FTC, kicked off on April 14, 2025. Over about 2 months, District Court Chief Judge James Bosberg is hearing arguments about whether then Facebook illegally monopolized the market for personal social networking services through its acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp. This is what FTC calls its biggest big tech showdown yet. Meta is the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Threads, and is at the center of this. The FTC is accusing Meta of engaging in illegal practices to maintain a monopoly. But what does all of this really mean for the future of big tech? Well, let's walk through it all from the backstory to the arguments and what could happen if either side wins. To understand this trial, we need to rewind to the early 2010s. In 2012, Facebook, which is now Meta, acquired Instagram for $1 billion. Instagram at that time was a growing platform but still far from being the giant it is today. Just 2 years later, Facebook made another huge move. It bought WhatsApp for $19 billion, a massive price for a messaging app that was still in the early stages. These deals were approved by US regulators and things moved forward. But years later, those very same deals came under fire. In 2020, the FTC filed a lawsuit against Meta, accusing the company of maintaining an illegal monopoly. Their argument centers on the idea that Meta's acquisitions weren't just about expanding its business, but they were deliberate attempts to wipe out rising competition with the strategy of buy or bury. The FTC's first attempt to bring this case to court was dismissed, but in 2021 they came back stronger with more detailed complaint. The case has been making its way through the courts ever since. So let's break down exactly what both sides are arguing. The FTC argues that Meta's strategy was to eliminate immediate threats by purchasing rising competitors rather than out-innovating them. The agency is seeking to force Meta to divest both platforms and to provide advance notice for future acquisitions. The FTC's case hinges on three main arguments, which they believe show how Meta used its power to create a monopoly. Let's look at each of them in detail. First, the acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp. FTC argues that these deals weren't just about expanding Meta's business portfolio, they were moves to eliminate future competition, as I told you earlier. According to FTC, both Instagram and WhatsApp were growing rapidly at the time, but by acquiring them, Meta took away any potential rivals before they had the chance to truly compete. Second, FTC is pointing to the internal communication that allegedly show Meta's true intentions. The FTC claims to have found emails from Meta executives, including one where Mark Zuckerberg is quoted saying, "It is better to buy than compete." The FTC argues that this email proves Meta's intent was not to innovate but to eliminate any competitive threats. And third, the FTC claims that Meta used its power to control the platform, blocking competitors from accessing critical features. One example the FTC highlights is when the video app Vine was growing in popularity, Meta restricted Vine's access to Facebook's friend finding tool, making it harder for Vine to grow its user base. Together, the FTC argues that Meta didn't just win by offering a better product, it eliminated the competition that might have created better alternatives. Now, how is Meta responding to this? As you can imagine, Meta is strongly defending itself against these accusations, and it has publicly argued that its acquisition of Instagram and WhatsApp helped improve these platforms and that breaking them up would harm innovation and users. Meta argued that the acquisitions were legal and at that time they were approved by US government and that government's decisions to approve these deals should not be reversed years later. Meta also maintains that they didn't buy Instagram and WhatsApp to squash competition. Instead, they argue they helped those platforms thrive. Instagram, for example, has grown into one of the most popular social media platforms, and WhatsApp has reached billions of users worldwide. According to Meta, these acquisitions didn't stifle competition, they helped both platforms reach their full potential. Additionally, Meta also argued that there is still plenty of competition in the market. They pointed to other platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, Discord, and even LinkedIn as a proof that users have a variety of options. Meta insists that it does not hold a monopoly. There are plenty of other successful platforms out there. Finally, Meta warned that if court forces breakup of company, it could have serious consequences for users. Meta claims that separating Instagram and WhatsApp from Facebook could lead to poorer services, less integration, and even privacy concerns. The company argues that breakup would hurt the very users the lawsuit is supposed to protect. Now let's talk about what's at the stake here. If the FTC wins, Meta could be forced to sell Instagram and WhatsApp, essentially breaking up the company, and this would be a huge shake-up in the tech world and could have far-reaching consequences for how large tech companies operate. On the other hand, if Meta wins, it could set a precedent that makes it harder for the government to challenge other future mergers between tech companies. Essentially, if Meta is allowed to keep its acquisition, it could signal that tech giants are free to buy up any potential competitors without the risk of government intervention. The bigger question here is whether it's okay for tech companies to grow by buying up every rising competitors, or if there should be a limit. Meta is already one of the biggest companies in the world, and critics argue that it's crossed a limit by preventing others from rising to challenge it. Now, where do things stand right now in 2025? As of 2025, the trial is still ongoing. FTC's revised complaint has been accepted by the court, and both sides have presented expert witnesses, internal communications, market data, and other evidence to back their claims. Mark Zuckerberg has even participated in hearings as part of the case. At this stage, the case is still being reviewed by the court, and there is no final ruling yet. Antitrust cases like this can take a long time to resolve. For now, all eyes are on the courtroom. It's clear that the final ruling will set a precedent for how the government can regulate big techs in the future. The FTC believes that if companies like Meta are allowed to grow without limits, it could set a risky example. They say that without clear rules, big tech companies might keep buying up smaller ones before they even get a chance to compete. And in the FTC's view, that kind of a behavior slows down innovation, gives people fewer choice, and puts too much power in the hands of one company. On the other side, Meta says it's being targeted just because it's big and successful. They argue that they followed all rules, invested heavily in their platforms, and brought value to billions of users around the world. Meta feels this lawsuit isn't it really about fixing any wrongdoing. It's more about going after a company for growing too much. And if Meta loses, they worry it might scare off other businesses. From